I don't often review talk shows on this channel, but this one is unique. For one thing, it goes out live around the world on Netflix every single Wednesday. And for another, it is hosted by a very famous name, John Mulaney. Let's talk about Everybody's Live. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my TV review for Everybody's Live with John Mulaney. This is airing live around the world every Wednesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 Pacific on the West Coast. And that is every Wednesday for the next few weeks. They've done 4 of them so far. And this actually is an extension of a similarly concept show, Everybody's in LA, that John Mulaney did about a year ago with Netflix. That was every night for about a week. It was part of the Netflix is a Joke Festival. So obviously you had a ton of comedians already there, kind of packed in LA, as the title indicates. But I guess over the course of the following year, Netflix and John Mulaney decided that title was a little too exclusive or whatever. So now it's just called Everybody's Live. But it features a lot of the same things, including Richard Kind as the announcer and sort of paneling the guests. So we'll get into all of this here momentarily. First, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a subscriber already for Dan Reviews It, thank you so much for that. I love it when you guys return and check out my videos. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell too, so you get the alerts for all my drops. I do post just about every day, so there's always a lot going on here on the channel. And you could, of course, like this video or comment below. That stuff helps the channel out as well. So look, I've done a small handful of talk show reviews over the years. I reviewed Drew Barrymore's show when she came on, and in fact, when I started doing my weekly TV roundup years ago, the first review I ever did was of the premiere episode of the Kelly Clarkson show. So talk shows, look, they are near and dear to my heart. Certainly, I watched them all the time growing up, both the daytime versions and the nighttime. So this is, for all intents and purposes, the same type of structure as a nighttime show. However, it panels the guests, which means that you have multiple guests out at a time. This is something that Carson used to do back in the 70s, and it continues on to this day with shows like Graham Norton, and Andy Cohen does it with, I forget what the E show is called, but Watch What Happens Live, I think. So he still does it as well. And so Mulaney has sort of taken that concept, but because the show is broadcast live, he can actually take phone calls as well, and that's part of the fun of this show as well. So the basic concept is he comes out and does a little bit of a monologue. It's, look, he's a stand-up pro, so he, I'm sure it's all written, but, it seems like it's off the dome for, 5, 6, 7 minutes. He goes back and forth a little bit with Richard Kind as the announcer, and then he will sit down. They'll have a little discussion there, and then he'll invite the first couple of guests out. And so he oscillates between 2 famous guests at first, or 1 famous guest and the expert that he has coming on, because each episode features a theme. For example, so far we've had borrowing money. Recently we had squatters. So he'll bring on an expert sort of in that area. He did one on cruise ships. And so sometimes he'll bring the guest out first with a big A-lister, like Michael Keaton, for example, was in the first episode. Or he will bring out 2 of the big-name celebrities first, like the most recent episode was Wanda Sykes and John Waters. And then the second half of the show, he will bring out the other A-list guest, and then the expert, or, vice versa. And usually the third guest is like, one of his buddies, like Nick Kroll was on one of the episodes. But either way, it's interesting to see all of these, sort of famous people coming out together. Some of, whom have never met. I think, like in the Quinta Brunson, Ben Stiller episode, I think they had never met before, so they were, sort of chatting with each other. And it's very freeform. Mulaney, yes, he has an idea of what kind of things he wants to talk about within the topic, but it sort of goes in many directions. And Joan Baez was on the first show, before they even got to talk about the topic. She was, going off about her, political stance about what's happening and how the world is crumbling right now, especially in America, and all of that. Of course, Mulaney welcomed that with open arms. He's on the same page, as am I. So love that she got to do that, but then they got right to, the fun of the matter as well. And then there's also a musical guest that typically comes up at the end of the show. However, one of them, he had 2 musical guests, the Kims from the 90s, Kim Deal from the Breeders, Brothers, and Kim, oh man, I'm going to get crucified on this. Kim Gordon, there it is, from Sonic Youth. Not a huge Sonic Youth fan. But he had them play throughout the show. We had 2 songs at the beginning, one from each of the Kims, and then at the end of the show, both of them played together. So he mixes it up a little bit in that regard. The musical guests are very left of center, from people from his childhood, like the Breeders and Sonic Youth, to this last week. It was an orchestra of playing some music that he likes to listen to with his baby. So there's a lot of different directions this is going in, and I think not all of them are good. I will say I love Richard Kind. We know him from so many things over the years, maybe most notably from his voice work in some Pixar movies. He was notably Bing Bong in the original Inside Out, but you've seen him in so many things, I'm sure. And so he is the announcer, and they became friends on some Broadway show years ago. So they have a nice little back and forth. But the worst part by far is really the scripted bits and the scripted material, not his monologue. Like I said, he's a professional stand-up, and he's a great one. And he has some great observational humor in the monologue. Some of it relates to the topic at hand. Some of them, some of the jokes do not. But it's the scripted sort of back and forth once he sits down from the monologue with Richard Kind. And then there are these taped pieces in between where like a commercial break would be, but it's Netflix, so they don't have commercials. So there's like scripted pieces. And then there's even like in the middle of each episode is like some sort of bit. One of them was A.D. Bryant came in as pretending to be Jelly Roll last week. And, the bit was she didn't really know anything about Jelly Roll. So she just started singing the song about, hey, I'm Jelly Roll, whatever. Like the scripted stuff is not great, which is weird because he comes from the writer's room of Saturday Night Live, and he's written a lot of very successful sketches there. So I don't know why that part doesn't quite come together. And then there's the reining in of the guests, allowing the guests to do and say whatever they want. Hey, that's great. But the show loses focus quite a bit. And sometimes it's cute and fun. Look, John Waters, I could watch him be the guest every week. He was hilarious, and he's always got great stories. But then the week before was Lunel, who I don't really care for, and Pete Davidson, who is, look, I'm sure he's a nice guy. He's a good friend of Mulaney's, but he's just not that funny, whatever. So their back and forth was not great, a bit distracting, what have you. So, look, like all talk shows, I think, a lot of it per episode is going to live and die by the guests and how engaging they are and how engaged the host is with them and what have you. But because we've got call-ins here, they can go well or poorly. And even when they go poorly, Mulaney can kind of make a joke about it. But the scripted pieces are really not great. And the musical guests have not been good either. It's a lot of noise for me. I know, look, I'm an older guy, but I'm basically the same age as Mulaney. So, except the orchestra this week, which was great. But for the most part, they've just been kind of noise to me. So don't love that. I think this is a work in progress for sure, which is interesting since he had 5 or 6 episodes last year during the Netflix as a Joke Festival to kind of hone this a little better and make it, pop a little bit more. I'm still not sure it's there. This most recent week was the best one, but I think that was largely due to John Waters and Wanda Sykes being the first guests out and being super engaging. But I like the concept of the theme every episode and talking about sort of one subject and bringing an expert on in that subject. I like it best probably when they come out first so they can talk a little bit about it. But if you have 2 powerhouses like John Waters and Wanda Sykes at the ready, sure, bring them out first. That works too. But yes, there is, I think, 12 of these total for this season. So we will have 8 more to go as of this recording. And the good thing about Netflix is even though you don't have to catch it live, you can check it out after the fact. It's in a slightly edited version, not for content, but I think for time. They like it to be an hour, and on the live version, it goes on a little bit past that. Not much, but a few minutes. So they tighten it up a little bit in post with that, cut out, a couple of things here and there. But for the most part, I think this is still a work in progress. But I love John Mulaney, so I will stick with it and see if it improves. I leave for now Everybody's Live with a C+. And like I said, you can check it out Wednesday nights live on Netflix or after the fact at any point on the surface. All right, thank you so much for watching. Dan Reviews It. I'll see you next time.